If you think of brands like the Cheesecake Factory or Papa John's Pizza or Rainforest Cafe back in the day, I worked with those companies, got them money so that they could expand to more locations, they could hire more people. To me, that's a very value-added exercise of helping entrepreneurs really be able to expand and deliver value and make an impact in the economy. When you go back and you look at what happened, there is this thought about, well, there were these broad lockdowns and we were all in this together. And the reality is that both of those are myths. The lockdowns disproportionately affected small businesses. It didn't affect the big company that was down the street.
Carol, so great to have you with us today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Carol, before we dig into the topic today, which is going to be your topic of your book, The War on Small Business, I do want to jump into your background because it really is very novel, in my opinion. Recovering investment banker, of course. You have a BS from Wharton, but you also studied with Second City there in Chicago. Tell us just a little bit about that, because I'm thinking Belushi, Aykroyd, Steve Martin. I mean, there's Martin Short. There's just a whole myriad. Why did you do that, and where did that come from?
Yes. So as you noted, I started in investment banking, and I call myself recovering because you never really leave deal making. Once you've been a deal maker, somebody always wants you involved in something. And I still sit on boards and do a lot in the business realm. But once I had sort of financial flexibility for myself, I decided I wanted to be more entrepreneurial and explore some of the things that I enjoyed doing. And one of those is media. And people were always like, oh, you should be on TV. You're so funny, blah, blah, blah. And, like, I don't know what to do there. But as I started my media appearances and I actually did some pilots for reality series and all that kind of thing. Some of the people I was working with said, you're so much, but you're always so focused on the content. It would be really good to let go of the content and just kind of, keep your focus elsewhere. Why don't you try doing improv? And obviously being in Chicago and being Second City with all those great names, it was an obvious choice. I did something a little different because I never followed the rules. That's sort of my entrepreneurial streak. Is I didn't want to take the standard classes and have to work at the level of sort of the slowest person in the room and have that big slog. So I actually did private training with them. And so my teachers were all, comedians and people who graduated from the program. Some of them you've seen on other TV shows. And I was the only student working with the masters, and that allowed me to, kind of flex those muscles in a way that was a little bit more accelerated and a little bit more my speed.
So do you think we'll ever see you on Saturday Night Live? Is that a possibility?
My husband's running joke is that I should have been a stand-up comedian, and we call a lot of the things that I do comedy for one, because I really amuse myself all day long and just kind of, if anybody else thinks it's funny, it's gravy, but that's kind of how I move through each day.
Excellent. Well, your most recent book, the New York bestseller, The War on Small Business, How the Government Used the Pandemic to Crush the Backbone of America. By the way, you have your other book, which I also have that one here, which is excellent, The Entrepreneur Equation. So my curiosity is investment banking, deal making, Wall Street.
Yes.
Why do you care about small business and entrepreneurs?
So people always get very confused when they hear the phrase investment banking, and I think it means a lot of different things to people. The area that I was in was called corporate finance. And what we did is that we helped entrepreneurs and businesses raise money so that they could expand their businesses, as well as mergers and acquisitions and things like that. But on the capital raising side, if you think of brands like the Cheesecake Factory or Papa John's Pizza or Rainforest Cafe back in the day, I worked with those companies, got them money so that they could expand to more locations, they could hire more people, we could all go there and get fat because we love all of their delicious food. And to me, that's a very value-added exercise of helping entrepreneurs really be able to expand and deliver value and make an impact in the economy. And one of the things that happened all the time when I was in investment banking is that I would get phone calls in from small businesses who saw what we were doing for these sort of mid-sized businesses and say, could you help me? Could you provide that same level of advice? And the reality was I couldn't, because they couldn't afford the retainers. They couldn't afford, really spending an hour probably with the way that we charged. And so when I left investment banking, that always made an impact on me, because I was always entrepreneurial. I always believed in creating opportunities for wealth creation and economic freedom for everybody. And so I said, well, maybe the media is a way for me to put out information at scale to reach a whole slew of small business owners. And that's really what got me interested in small business. And as I got more and more entrenched, you obviously saw all the benefits of having a very strong set of small businesses in the economy.
So Carol, because America was founded on the principles of freedom, you said economic freedom, choices, property rights, why in the world would the government, in this case, and that's the tenets of your book, have a war on small business? And maybe give us a definition of what small business is versus big business. But why this war when we think about small business being the backbone of free market and capitalism?
Yeah, I mean, to anybody who's a rational thinker, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but then you kind of layer in human nature and you see where it goes. So to take a step back and answer your question, David, if you look at the economy as it stands today, it was a little bit less when I wrote the book, but if you kind of divide it in half, the economy is almost split in half. So about half of the GDP and about half the jobs are in the hands of 31.7 million small businesses in the United States. A lot of them are solo businesses. 6 million of them have employees. They're in every geography, every industry, so on and so forth. The other half of the economy is in the hands of about 20,000 or so big companies. So if you are a politician and you are looking for compliance and you are looking for campaign contributions, what's easier for you to sort of align yourself with? Is it 20,000 big businesses that have all this money, or is it 31.7 million really independent people who don't want to hear from you?
Exactly.
I think that's pretty straightforward. So when you go back and you look at what happened, there is this thought about, well, there were these broad lockdowns and we were all in this together. And the reality is that both of those are myths. The lockdowns disproportionately affected small businesses, and particularly consumer-facing ones, ones like restaurants and gyms, and I would imagine to some extent dental practices as well.
Oh, yes.
And it didn't affect the big company that was down the street. One of the things that was my sort of favorite wink was the fact that weed dispensaries were considered quote unquote essential businesses, when in most jurisdictions they have not been legalized except for within the last couple of years. So now all of a sudden it's very essential that you get your pot, but somebody who's trying to run a small business can't do that. By the way, you could take your dog to PetSmart and it could get groomed and it could get its nails done and a little haircut, a little bow, but you couldn't as a person do that for yourself. So it was very clear that these decisions weren't being made based on science. They were being made on political clout and connections. And so only, about a third of the economy, only a third, it's the biggest, catastrophe of all time, but it was government mandated. They only focused on a third of the economy. If we had focused, if we really in all this together, and you had shut down Amazon's warehouse, you had shut down Walmart, you had shut down the grocery store, and by the way, Wall Street hadn't gotten all the support from the Federal Reserve that it had, and it continued to languish as was happening in the February and early March timeframe of 2020. This probably doesn't last more than 2 weeks, and then you go to mitigation factors and we figure out how to work amongst the risk, which makes a lot of sense. But because it was these small businesses that didn't have the clout connections, the politicians could say, well, look, we're doing something, but not actually impact the people who were their cronies. So whether you think it is an intentional, hey, these people don't do anything for us, so, too hard to control, or they just are too small to matter, we know that they're not too big to fail, like in the last Great Recession financial crisis. And so I think that's the real outcome of what happened over the last 2 years.
I think we've all heard the term "never let a crisis go to waste." I think maybe Rahm Emanuel might have been the last one
yes.
to grab that one back in the day. And I think this is another case of the government using this opportunity to, as you said, call it a wealth transfer from Main Street to Wall Street. If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.